Victoria Sterling, CEO of a $3 billion empire, stood at the Whole Foods checkout in Manhattan with her black card declined due to a technical banking glitch. Behind her, a line of impatient customers began murmuring, while the heavily tattooed cashier looked at her with a challenging smirk. But it was the 10-year-old girl next to her who changed everything. Lily lived with her grandmother in a Bronx housing project, wore second-hand clothes, and had only 20 crumpled dollars in her worn Disney wallet. When she saw the elegant woman in distress, she did something no one expected. Paid her $300 grocery bill with the money she'd saved for her grandmother's birthday gift. What Victoria didn't know was that this child had just performed the most generous act of her life toward America's wealthiest woman. And what Lily didn't know was that this woman would discover, in the hours that followed, a devastating truth about her family that would forever change both their destinies. Victoria Sterling had never shopped for groceries in her life. At 42, she owned a financial empire stretching from Wall Street to Silicon Valley, lived in a $10 million penthouse overlooking Central Park, and her time was so valuable that each hour was worth more than most people earned in a year. But that November morning, through a twist of fate that would change everything, she found herself in the Whole Foods on Columbus Avenue with a cart full of gourmet products she didn't even know how to prepare. It was Margaret's fault, her personal assistant of 15 years, who that morning had been rushed to Mount Sinai Hospital with acute appendicitis. Before being wheeled into the ambulance, she had whispered the only words that truly frightened Victoria in 20 years of business. She absolutely had to buy food for that evening's charity dinner, because all their usual caterers were on strike, and the event couldn't be postponed. 500 guests, including senators and ambassadors, were expecting the dinner that would raise funds for St. Jude Children's Hospital. Victoria had stared at Margaret's handwritten list like it was ancient hieroglyphics. White truffles, Dom Perignon champagne, Scottish smoked salmon, Osetra caviar. She had sent her driver to the largest supermarket in the area, thinking it would be a simple 10-minute stop. Instead, she found herself lost among endless aisles of products she'd never seen. With a cart that weighed like a small car and a feeling of inadequacy she hadn't experienced since her first day at Harvard Business School. The cashier serving her was a man in his late 20s, short, dark hair, arms covered in tattoos that told stories Victoria couldn't read. His name tag read Marcus, and he looked at her with that barely concealed superiority that humble people reserve for the wealthy when they see them struggling. He had noticed her $100,000 Patek Philippe watch, the custom Chanel suit, the Italian shoes that cost more than his monthly salary. When Marcus scanned the last item and announced the total, $297.60, Victoria casually pulled out her Black American Express card, the one with no limits that allowed her to buy an apartment with a simple swipe. But when Marcus ran the card through the reader, the display showed the words that froze Victoria's blood. Transaction declined. She tried her second card, the corporate one directly linked to her holding company's accounts. Same result. Then the third, the backup one she kept for emergencies. Nothing. Marcus now looked at her with a barely concealed smile, clearly enjoying the spectacle of the powerful woman reduced to helplessness by a simple technical problem. Behind her, the lunch rush line began to grow impatient, muttering comments Victoria could hear perfectly. In 20 years since building her empire from nothing, she had never been in such a humiliating situation. She had no cash in her purse. When had she ever needed it? And her smartphone showed that the banking system was experiencing technical issues across the entire East Coast. Marcus drummed his fingers on the counter, clearly amused by the situation, while Victoria felt the heat of embarrassment rising to her face. It was at that moment of total vulnerability that a clear little voice cut through the embarrassed silence of the supermarket. A girl of about 10, with blonde hair in two messy pigtails, and a dress that had seen better days, approached the checkout with determined steps. She had a small basket with just a few basic necessities: bread, milk, pasta, and medicine that Victoria recognized as very expensive. The girl looked at Victoria with those blue eyes that still held all the innocence in the world, then at Marcus, who continued to smile sarcastically, and finally at the display still showing the card decline. Without saying a word, she opened her small Disney wallet, Cinderella dancing in a blue dress, and pulled out a crumpled $20 bill, 2 tens, and a handful of coins she counted carefully. Victoria watched her in amazement. This child, who clearly belonged to a family with financial difficulties, was about to pay for groceries that cost almost 15 times what she had with her. But before Victoria could say anything, Lily, that was the name written on a handmade bracelet she wore on her wrist, had already spoken to Marcus. The cashier, caught off guard by the unexpected gesture, looked alternately at the child and Victoria. For the first time since the rich lady had arrived, his sarcastic smile vanished, replaced by an expression of disbelief mixed with respect. Lily counted her money with the seriousness of a banker, arriving at exactly $27.34, everything she owned in the world. Victoria felt something break inside her. This child, who didn't know her, who didn't know who she was or what she possessed, was sacrificing her savings to help a stranger in difficulty. She bent down toward her, noticing for the first time the details that wealth had always prevented her from seeing. Shoes a bit too big, probably inherited from someone, a clean but patched dress, a genuine smile that illuminated a face that had never known cynicism or calculation. When Lily smiled and said it was okay, that it happened to everyone to forget money at home, Victoria Sterling understood she had encountered something rarer than all the diamonds she had ever bought: pure generosity, the kind that doesn't calculate, expects nothing in return, doesn't wonder if it's worth it. And at that moment, in front of a Whole Foods checkout on Columbus Avenue, America's wealthiest woman learned what it meant to be truly poor. Victoria couldn't take her eyes off Lily as she paid for the groceries with all the naturalness in the world. When Marcus, evidently moved by the gesture, gave her the change, Victoria realized the child had just spent all her savings for a perfect stranger. The weight of that generosity crushed her more than any billion-dollar contract she had ever signed. She accompanied Lily out of the supermarket, carrying the bags the girl had bought for her, feeling more inadequate than ever. The child chatted with the carefree nature of her age, telling her she lived with Grandma Rosa in a housing project not far away, that she was in 5th grade, and that the money had been saved by selling handmade bracelets to her classmates. They were going to buy a birthday gift for Grandma, but it didn't matter. They would manage somehow. Victoria felt a knot in her throat she hadn't experienced since, as a child, she had seen her mother cry over unpaid bills. She asked Lily if she could accompany her home to personally thank her grandmother and return the money, but especially because something about this child had touched her heart in a way she couldn't explain. Lily accepted with the enthusiasm of someone who had just made a new friend. The building where Lily lived was one of those 1970s housing projects built for working families, now home to people who fought every day to survive with dignity. The elevator had been broken for months. The stairs needed maintenance, but Victoria immediately noticed that, despite everything, there was a sense of community that her luxury condominiums had never known. Doors were open, children played in the hallways, grandmothers chatted on the landings. Lily led her to the 4th floor, in front of a door with Rodriguez written on a yellowed card. When she rang and shouted that she was back with a friend, Victoria heard slow steps approaching, and the sound of at least 3 locks opening. The door revealed a woman of about 70, white hair pulled back in a bun, blue eyes identical to Lily's, but marked by a weariness that spoke of difficult years. Rosa Rodriguez looked Victoria up and down, immediately noticing the elegance out of place in that context. Lily told her the whole story with the enthusiasm of a reporter, explaining how she had helped the nice lady who had forgotten her money. Rosa listened in silence, then invited Victoria in with that old-fashioned courtesy that seemed to belong to a vanished world. The apartment was small but spotlessly clean, furnished with pieces that had seen decades but were maintained with meticulous care. On the walls, family photos that told a story of love and sacrifice. Little Lily with a young woman who looked very much like her, the same woman with a man in military uniform, wedding and communion photos that testified to a united family despite difficulties. While Rosa prepared coffee with a 30-year-old percolator, Victoria observed Lily playing with a doll that had lost an arm but had been lovingly repaired.
Enjoying the story? Give it a little like and don't forget to subscribe. Now then, let's carry on.
The house spoke of dignified poverty, of people who had never given up despite everything, of a love that didn't need luxury to be authentic. Victoria pulled out her wallet to return the money to Lily, but Rosa stopped her with a gesture of her hand. Lily's grandmother told her their story with that frankness that belongs to those who have nothing left to hide. Lily had been orphaned 3 years earlier when her parents died in a car accident. She, Rosa, was 72, with a $500 monthly Social Security check that barely covered survival. Lily was the light of her life, an extraordinarily mature and generous child who had never complained about economic hardships and who taught her every day what it meant to be rich in love. Victoria listened in silence, feeling an emotion grow inside her that she didn't recognize. When Rosa told her that Lily dreamed of becoming a doctor to help people, but that they probably would never have money for college, something in her broke definitively. She looked at this child who continued playing, unaware of the economic difficulties awaiting her, and made the most important decision of her life. She stood up and looked Rosa and Lily in the eyes. She told them who she really was, Victoria Sterling, owner of one of America's greatest fortunes. Rosa paled, but Lily looked at her with the same naturalness as before, as if it made no difference to her. And maybe that was exactly the point. For Lily, she was just the nice lady she had helped at the supermarket. Victoria made them a promise she would keep at any cost. Lily didn't have to worry about the future anymore. She would have the best education possible, could become everything she dreamed of, and most importantly, she and her grandmother would never have to count pennies again. But there was one condition. Lily had to continue being the generous child she was, and Victoria wanted to be part of their lives, not as a benefactor, but as family. That evening, returning to her luxury penthouse, Victoria looked at herself in the mirror, and for the first time in years recognized the woman she had been before becoming rich. The child who had paid her groceries with her last dollars had returned something she had lost on the path to success: the ability to see beyond numbers and profits, to recognize that true wealth is measured in acts of selfless love. In the days following that supermarket encounter, Victoria discovered she had completely underestimated the impact that Lily and Rosa would have on her life. Initially, she thought she could solve their situation with a donation, but realized she needed them more than they needed her. Lily surprised her by refusing transfer to a private elite school, preferring to improve the public one for all her classmates. This gave birth to the project that transformed the South Bronx neighborhood: school renovation, free cafeteria, scholarships, and medical assistance. Lily accompanied her to meetings with her notebook, writing down names of classmates in need. The real transformation happened when Victoria began spending afternoons in Rosa and Lily's apartment. Sitting at the kitchen table, she helped with homework and listened to neighborhood stories. For the first time in 20 years, she ate beans and rice instead of caviar, discovering flavors she never knew existed. Lily taught her things no MBA had ever explained: finding joy in small things, measuring success in smiles instead of millions. Rosa became the mother she never had, scolding her when she worked too much, and calling her "my rich child," with an affection no one had ever given her. The first Christmas together was the test of their new extended family. Victoria had always spent holidays in the world's most luxurious hotels, never around a kitchen table unwrapping handmade gifts. Lily and Rosa had insisted she spend Christmas Eve with them, and she accepted with curiosity and terror. Lily's gift to Victoria moved her to tears, a photo album documenting all the moments they'd shared. Victoria laughing with a joy she didn't remember ever feeling, the three of them feeding pigeons in Central Park. Victoria had prepared expensive but discreet gifts, but Lily and Rosa had a surprise worth more than all the gold in the world. They had transformed the small study into a room for her, with a single bed and walls covered with drawings Lily had made for her aunt of the heart. 5 years after that first supermarket encounter, 15-year-old Lily had become one of New York's brightest students, while maintaining the generosity that had conquered Victoria. She had founded a volunteer association at her school and still dreamed of becoming a doctor to help those who suffered. Victoria had completely transformed her life and business. She had sold most of her companies to focus on the Sterling Rodriguez Foundation, which in 5 years had helped thousands of struggling families across America. Her office was no longer in the luxury tower, but in a renovated building in the South Bronx, 10 minutes from Rosa and Lily's home. Rosa had become the foundation's informal consultant for everything regarding struggling families. Victoria had learned to call her grandma like Lily did, because that's what they had become, a real family. 10 years after that encounter that changed everything, 25-year-old Lily had become a pediatric doctor, exactly as she had dreamed as a child. She worked at Mount Sinai Hospital that Victoria had helped expand, treating children from the same difficulties she had experienced. Victoria, now 52, had found a life balance she never imagined possible. Mornings working for the foundation, afternoons walking with 82-year-old Rosa in the park, evenings dining with her chosen family in the apartment that had become her true home. The 10th anniversary of their first meeting was celebrated by returning to the same Whole Foods, now completely renovated thanks to foundation funds. Marcus, the former cashier, had become the store manager and coordinated a food assistance program for struggling families in the neighborhood. Lily, still wearing the handmade bracelet from childhood, accompanied Victoria to the same checkout where it all began. This time, she brought her 3-year-old adopted daughter from a Romanian orphanage, a girl with the same blue eyes and generous heart that had conquered Victoria 10 years before. Victoria looked at Lily explaining to Sophia the importance of helping others and saw the perfect circle closing. A poor child had taught a rich woman the value of generosity. That woman had transformed her wealth into an instrument of good, and now that grown child was teaching the new generation the same values that had saved them both. Their story continued to be told, becoming urban legend and source of hope for anyone who had stopped believing in love. It proved that sometimes a simple declined credit card is enough to discover that the right person has always existed, just waiting for the perfect moment to enter your life and transform it forever. That evening, during their extended family dinner that now included doctors, teachers, and families helped by the foundation, Victoria raised her glass for the annual toast. She told once again how a 10-year-old girl had changed her life by paying a $300 grocery bill with $20 and an immense heart, how she had learned that true wealth is measured in lives touched and smiles given. Lily interrupted the speech, standing up with Sophia in her arms. She said she wanted to tell a different story, that of a woman who had everything but was poor inside, until she met a child who taught her that giving is always more beautiful than receiving. The woman thought she was saving the child from poverty, but actually, the child had saved the woman from the empty wealth that was slowly killing her. When Sophia, with her 3-year-old voice, asked why everyone was crying if it was a happy story, Victoria took her in her arms and explained that sometimes we cry from joy when we understand that miracles really exist and can happen even at a supermarket checkout, when a child decides that love is worth more than money. The Sterling Rodriguez Foundation continued to grow, now helping struggling families in 38 states. But for Victoria, Lily, and Rosa, true success was measured every evening at dinner, when they looked around the table and saw a family born not from blood, but from the daily choice to love each other, despite everything. The story of the girl who paid the millionaire's groceries became legend in the South Bronx, then throughout New York, finally across all of America. They told it in schools as an example of generosity, cited it in conferences as a model of social responsibility, remembered it in families as proof that love always wins over indifference. But for Victoria Sterling, who every morning woke up in her room in the Bronx apartment instead of her $10 million penthouse, the most beautiful story was the one she lived every day, becoming rich only when she learned to give everything she had, and finding a family the moment she stopped seeking profit and started seeking love. Like, if you believe true wealth is measured in acts of love, comment which moment in the story moved you most. Share to inspire those who think money is everything. Subscribe for more stories of generosity that change lives. Sometimes, a declined credit card can be life's most beautiful gift. Sometimes children are richer than adults because they still know what it means to give without calculating. And sometimes paying for a stranger's groceries is enough to discover that the most beautiful family is the one you choose with your heart. Because true wealth isn't in your bank account, but in the hearts you touch along the way.